Hey guys, welcome back to another tutorial. Today I'm going to be going over kind of some basics of displacement. We went over this really recently in Blender. As you guys can see, we're in Eevee right here, and I have this really cool displacement map based on an image. So what I have been doing is I've basically been going to pexels.com or just Google and searching up some different textures to try out. So I just want to show you guys kind of like how this works, and then we'll hop into it. So basically, the way it works is you just take an image and you basically apply it to your displacement. So let's find an image that will work great for this. Okay, this is a good one right here. I'm going to go ahead and save this image. Go ahead and download that. And then as you guys can see over here in my displacement, I can just select that image. And just like that, we have an entirely new displacement. Now you'll be wondering, how do I get the color to appear on here? And the way that we do that is we just set up some nodes that look like this. We have an image node, some mapping, texture, coordinates. I'm going to go ahead and locate that texture. And just like that, we have our texture on there. Now, you'll probably want to scale this to be like about the size of your image. And if you really want it to be perfect, you can import that as image as planes. Now, what I've done here is I've created kind of like a pixelated landscape. And we're going to go ahead and explore some ideas for how we can basically turn any image into pixelated format. So I did this earlier. I actually took an image of my face. So this image right here is of my face. I'm also going to pop that over into the displacement texture here. And as you guys can see, I now have a displacement of my face. I'm going to go ahead and drop that value down to like 1. I'm going to go ahead and squeeze that image back in. As you can see, top-down view, that is indeed my face. However, it's also a 3D environment too. So there's a lot of cool stuff we can explore here with this technique. And it's really pretty simple node setup. It's nodes and displacement. So again, what's really interesting about this is someone specifically asked me on YouTube, Kenny, how do I do this exact thing right here? They were like, how do you make that pixelated version of that image into a 3D object, basically? Like, how do you kind of protrude those pixels? This is basically how you do that. So this is really interesting and fun to play with. Now, you can see that if you look really, really closely to the edges here, they're not perfect. And the reason they're not perfect is because of the quality of the image itself and also the amount of subdivisions. If I tab into edit mode here, you'll notice I have quite a bit of subdivisions here. In fact, I think I have like 200 or something like that. But again, this is kind of just a really quick way to basically project these cubes upwards and downwards for my face here. And I thought this was so cool, this technique. There's definitely a lot that we could do with this. So I'm going to go ahead and try a couple other images out, and then I'm going to show you guys how we can actually use our own images. Now, really quickly, I do want to mention, if we head over to the texture tab, basically the way that this works, and I tested it with this, is you have, so right now we just have the same image texture, but I'm going to go ahead and drop this back on here. So the actual black and white values of your image are going to determine like the height and like protrusion or extrusion of the actual displacement. So as you guys can see right here, if I go to my top-down view, this is basically what this image looks like. And it's also going to displace it based on those values. And I'll prove that to you right now. I'll just drop another image in here. This one's pretty much perfect to test this out. I'm going to go ahead and also swap this image right here. Perfect. So as you guys can see, and this is actually really interesting because this is just an image, right? And I'm using it as a displacement with a high amount of subdivisions. And you can see that based on the black and white values, and if this was a higher quality image, these edges would be pretty much perfect. We can actually create a staircase with a 2D flat image, no modeling required. So if I wanted to, I could actually apply this this displacement, and this would just become a mesh. So this is a really, really powerful technique. And what's cool is if you can find just the right image, you can do some crazy things. So for example, this one right here, right? If I go ahead and select this one, let me just make sure I'm selecting it on my image texture too. You'll notice that different gradients will give you different results. So this is just a 2D image that is now a 3D object. And again, you can change the displacement values. I mean, this is just really remarkable in my opinion. So this is just a lot of fun to mess with. So I really wanted to show you guys kind of what this was capable of. Let's go ahead and try a couple of other things. Let's see what we got. Okay, so this is like carbon fiber here. Carbon fiber is going to be a little bit different. Let me go ahead and slap that texture on there. So this is the carbon fiber texture. Now, see how it's not like perfect? You're going to have to adjust the actual like displacement value. I'm going to do that holding shift. Now, it's not going to work for every texture, but as you guys can see, We do have a little bit of texture here. Now this is Eevee, so in cycles this will probably look a lot better. But as you guys can see, we do have a texture very quickly just by messing around with that displacement input there. Let's try another, shall we? Let's see. What's this one right here? This one's kind of hard to tell what that is. I'm not going to use that one. Yeah, we've got the ocean, so this will probably look really nice. Yeah, and then let me go ahead and use the ocean texture here as well. And just like that, it's kind of hard to see. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there is actually texture there. So this is really, really powerful. And I wanted to show you guys kind of how to do this because I feel like a lot of people are looking to do this kind of stuff. Even if it means just like getting in here with a close camera shot and creating this really cool sci-fi environment. I mean, there's just a lot that you can do with this. And it's really powerful because we can actually make our own images for our displacement maps. So what I would like to do is I would like to open up my pixelated, let's see if I can find it, my pixelated file. I think it's in my downloads. Let's go ahead and check it out. I think it might be this one. There's a slight chance. Anyway, I'm going to find this file, and once I find it, is this it right here? Yeah, okay, so this is our file right here. So what's great about this is I showed you guys how to create in a previous tutorial. I'm not going to go over this. This is the basic node setup, how to create a voxel or like a pixelated look for any image. So as you guys can see, if I swap this image out with something from my downloads, such as like this, well, that actually that's not a good example. Hold on. Let me find a different example. Maybe this leaf texture here. Yes, perfect. Okay, so now we can adjust this scale. And what we can do, I'm just going to scale it way, way, way up like this, is now that we're snapped onto our image here, this is this leaf texture, I can actually go to my output settings, make this image like 300% of what it normally is. Maybe let's do 400, and I'm just going to render this very quickly here. So let's go ahead and render this image out. It's going to take no time at all because it's such a simple node setup with a very low amount of samples. And I let that denoise for a second, and as soon as that's done denoising, I'm going to save this, and we're going to use this in our other displacement file. Blender does not seem to want to be cooperating right now, so I'm just going to go ahead and give it a quick second to denoise this image. This is a big image, so I'm not surprised that it's going a little bit slow right now. Apologies, everyone. Right when you think your computer's fast, and then this happens. Okay, here we go. So there's our image right there. Thank you guys for waiting. And as you guys can see, if I zoom in, the quality's pretty darn good. Now, there are actually like slight gradients on the edge here. So I'm curious to see how our image plane is going to handle this. So I'm just going to save this, and I'm going to show you guys the difference between that and if you were to have a perfectly sharp edge. I'm going to save this as just like some random letters and numbers. And then let's go back to our original texture file here. And then instead of this image, I'm going to be selecting this one. Cool. So as you guys can see, I'm also going to swap it out here as well. I'm going to scale this in on the X to make it like relatively square. As you guys can see, we've just created a landscape picture, or a landscape like block texture type of thing, just from an image. So this is like really, really powerful stuff. And I want to show you guys kind of how to do this with anything. Now, one of the things you'll notice, like I said, is along the edges here, you'll notice that it's not like perfect. Like there's some, not errors, but like, I'm not explaining it. Like there's just some roundness. I'm also going to go ahead and do this the opposite way to show you guys that it does work both ways. Now, I prefer it the other way, like top down like that, like going upwards like that. I think that looks really cool. So I'm going to actually go back to my other file, which is my pixelated file. So this is just basically taking an image and pixelating it, and we're going to go ahead and just pop a different image in here. Something a little more colorful might be nice. This could be really interesting here. Yeah, let's try this one. And let's go ahead and turn that value up to get a lot of those little pixels in there. And then if we zoom in really far, we should be able to adjust the edge here. I'm going to adjust it so that it's like pretty much perfect. There's no gradient in between the colors. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in a hue and saturation value right here. And we'll turn the strength down to 1. That looks fantastic. Let's go ahead and render that with no denoising this time. Again, we're using one sample to render this. So let's go ahead and render this out and see what this looks like. There shouldn't be any denoising process. Okay, and as you guys can see, the image is done. So I'm going to save that as whatever. Save it. And then we're going to go back to our displacement texture. And we're going to swap that image out yet again. I am an EV, guys, by the way. Cool and cool. And there you go, right there. I mean, it looks really cool. Now, obviously, you guys can use any imagery you want, any textures, but look how awesome that came out. And again, we can raise the strength here. And if you guys want it to be even more detailed, you could add another subdivision to this. But as you can see, this does look fantastic. Now, the reason it's probably getting just ever so slightly distorted is actually the dimensions of this itself, too. So I'm just going to make this 10 by 10 by 10, and we should be good to go. 20 by 20, yep, we're good to go. This is looking really cool. I love the way this came out, and you guys can, again, adjust this value however you want. Oops, just be careful, don't do what I just did. Well, you can, but keep in mind the results may vary depending on how high you put that displacement value. Right now it's at 3. I'm just going to go ahead and jump it back down to 2, something a little bit more realistic. Again, we're in Eevee, so let's go ahead and check what this looks like in cycles. We don't have any lighting in our scene, so I'm going to go ahead and just add in an environment texture here and just set up a quick scene, and then we'll call it a day on this tutorial here. So as you guys can see, I now have some lighting set up. I'm going to go ahead and figure out where the heck my camera is. Okay, so my camera is right here. I'm going to go ahead and bring it up. I am going to bring it back and just find a really cool composition here. I think I'm going to kind of turn myself around here. Yep, this is perfect. I'm going to bring myself back on the X value. I'm going to tilt myself up a little bit. This will be a really good composition, especially, guys, once we enable depth of field here. Let me just zoom out even more. Perfect. And let's go ahead and get past this one point here. Right about there might be perfect. I'm going to go ahead and give myself a 85mm lens. I'm going to turn the camera a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and narrow in on our scene here. And everything's looking good so far. I think I just want to enable some depth of field. Get an idea of kind of what we're looking at here. Okay, so let's go ahead and adjust the distance here. Focal distance. We'll do like 0.5 for now. Something like that looks kind of cool. And again, you guys can use whatever you want. In fact, I might even switch this again. Right now, everything's looking a little bit pale. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my compositing, and I'm going to enable use nodes, go to my 3D viewport down here, and I am going to zoom out, snap to my camera, split this view, and I'm just going to use a real-time compositing technique, which is now enabled right here in the compositor setting right here. Going to click on camera, and I'm just going to add in a hue and saturation node. I'm just going to bump this saturation up a little bit. That looks good. And then what we can do is we can also add we can add other cool effects here. I actually think that might do it though. That might be it. We can also adjust the contrast. So I'm going to type in brightness and contrast, add that node in there. And as you guys can see, we do have a good looking scene here. I'm going to bump the contrast up a little bit. Kind of crush those blacks a little bit, as they say. That looks fantastic. I'm pretty happy with this result. Yeah, I would say I'm pretty happy. Again, if you guys want to adjust these edges even further, we can do that. Again, it's going to really slow down your computer, because if you do hop into edit mode here, you can already see how many subdivisions we have. I can go ahead and attempt another subdivide, but I am quite afraid that it will quite literally probably crash my computer here. As you guys can see, this is not perfect by any means, but if we hop into the camera, we can kind of adjust our displacement just a little bit, and then we can raise our scene back up. Again, we're still going to have a nice looking scene here. The only other thing I might suggest, guys, and this again could possibly crash your computer, is to add a remesh modifier to this. Okay, I'm going to just go ahead and for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and apply the displacement and the subdivision modifier, and then I'm going to add in a remesh modifier, and you're going to see everything kind of disappear. I'm going to click on blocks, and my computer is going to basically explode. I'm then going to uncheck remove disconnected, and I'm going to raise this octree depth to 8 and go ahead and see what we get here. I'm a little bit afraid for what is about to happen, because I can already hear my computer heating up. But as you guys can see, this doesn't look bad. Let me go ahead and snap to the camera. Let's go to rendered view. As you guys can see, it actually didn't do a terrible job. In fact, it did a pretty damn good job in like reconfiguring the way that this should look in the geometry, and I'm very pleased with this. So now what I would like to do is go back to my shading tab. I'm going to go ahead and enable real-time compositing here as well, and then I'm just going to adjust my image textures like metallic feel. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here on the focused part, and then I'm just going to raise this metallic value and the roughness value. Actually, let's lower the metallic. Let's lower the roughness. There we go. That's kind of like slightly glossy. You can kind of see the reflections now. This looks awesome. Again, I'm just going to go check out the compositor real quick, and I'm just going to raise my my exposure here. So instead of brightness, I would like to use exposure because I do feel like they're just completely different. I don't really know what the brightness does. The exposure is perfect though. So now this is looking a lot better. Again, you guys can go ahead and select any lens type you want. You can now adjust your shot if you want something a little bit more subtle. This is looking pretty good. I do like the angle that we're at right now, although I'll adjust it like just a little bit. You guys can use your rule of thirds if you need to. I'm just going to put myself at a 90-degree angle and bring myself down into this scene. And I'm going to move myself forward a little bit too. Oops. I'm going to move myself. Oh my God, where am I? Okay, I'm getting a little mixed up here with where I am. This is good. Just be careful because like I said, what I just did definitely didn't help my situation at all. Okay, that looks good. Again, I'm going to do something like that. Okay, that looks good. I actually kind of liked what I had before. I'm just going to back up for a second. This was fine. I actually did like that. So we're gonna go ahead and keep it at that. And I do think this looks really good. Again, I wanted to show you guys kind of how to accomplish this pixelated landscape. As you can see back here, I do believe we have some strays. So these disconnected pieces, because I did uncheck disconnected, oh my God. It's funny, it looks like a Minecraft world from under here, but wow, that is just crazy. It's incredible what Blender can do, but again, this is based on an image that I made in Blender. I then displaced it, I applied the displacement and the subdivision surface, and I remeshed it, and it looks good. The other thing you might want to do is you might want to take that remesh and then bevel those edges. I'm tempted to try it, so what I'll do is I'll hop into solid mode. This will be the last thing I do. I'll duplicate this. Okay, I'm Shift D to duplicate, and then wait for Blender to cry. And as you guys can see, Blender's crying, and we have the blue ring of death. Chances are I'm gonna have to force quit. Nope, we're good. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and apply this modifier, and then I'm gonna hide our other plane over there. This is the part where you want to make sure you're saving often. So right now, if we tab into edit mode, everything's pretty simple. I do think we might be able to get away with a bevel here. I'm a little bit worried it's going to crash, so I'm going to save and then apply the bevel modifier. And let's see, is it working? I can't really tell. I'm going to raise the value a little bit. I don't think it's going to work because of the way that these vertices are. Now, if you did select vertices, then I think, yes, this thing would absolutely explode. Oh, interesting. It actually semi-works. As you guys can see, it doesn't look great. You could adjust the segments. I'll just raise them by 1. I don't think it's going to look good. Let's see. Let's see what happens. Oh, God. Yeah, okay, so be careful with this. Not terrible. Not terrible. All right, I'm not going to mess with that. I'm going to actually get rid of that, and I'm going to delete this. And I'm just going to go ahead and enable our old one, and we'll just call it a day on that. I still think this looks really good. Again, make sure you're enabling your real-time compositing. Super powerful tool here. That is kind of how you create like a pixelated landscape in Blender. This is kind of where I was going to go with the tutorial anyway. What's really cool is you could have this be your face, right? You could have all these pixels be your face. Start with a top-down view or a side view like this, and then go ahead and rotate to the top and reveal that this indeed was your face. So imagine this was my face. You start where the camera is, like on this angle here, right? Like zoomed in like this, and then you slowly rotate around and you reveal your face. This could be a really, really easy way to like impress a client, just kind of show them that you guys mean business when it comes to making your artwork. The underneath of this looks really cool too, but love the depth of field. I think this is really cool. The only other thing I could possibly think of is to add like a subject to our scene, which at the moment I don't have, but we could just, you know, make one. We could, Let's see, maybe just make a sphere. I did think earlier it would be really cool to just add a sphere to the scene and just have it be like hovering over this area. Maybe I'll try to place it in like an area where it's kind of like following the rule of thirds, maybe like, I don't know where that would be, like down here maybe. And then we could go ahead and just give this a subdiv and just make it perfectly metallic. Let me go ahead and shade that smooth. Again, I don't know if this is gonna look good, but this is why we experiment with these values. Kind of cool. You do a little something like that, you know what I mean? Like that could be the subject of your scene. Someone said this render time has to be 2 weeks. No, absolutely not. This should take less than 30 seconds to render this out. Now this is going to be a 1920 by 1080 render. If you were to bump up that size, it would take longer. But I am going to lower the roughness, just kind of see what that looks like. This is really interesting to me because we have this sphere that's kind of just like, it's sort of out of place. Everything else is a cube, and then it's a sphere. I might even tell the camera, hey, go ahead and focus on that sphere there. Perfect. Now we are perfectly focused on that sphere, and it looks really cool. How awesome is Blender? I mean, this is just so much fun. I'm having a blast right now. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click on the camera and just maybe do the slightest less depth of field. So this is, I'll do 0.1. This is 0.1 depth of field. So you can barely tell what's going on. This is 0.3, and then this is like 0.4 here. So again, depending on your f-stop, you're going to get a completely different result. Keep that in mind. Another thing you guys can do if you really want to is you could adjust your world's lighting in the background, but I kind of like what we have here, so I think I'm going to go ahead and render this out. Let's go over to our settings. Render settings, max samples. We'll do 300 for this one, see how that does for us, and then we'll do optics denoising. Light paths, I'm going to go ahead and bump those all up to 50. Get a nice solid render, and I think I'm going to make this for my desktop background, so I'm actually going to render this out at 4K. So I'm going to do 200% resolution as to what it is right now. Let's see, turn off filter glossy to 0. That usually helps for like a higher quality render. And I think, guys, we should be good to go. Let's go ahead and render this out. F12 is the shortcut to render. Let's see if Blender can handle it. And hopefully we don't have any hidden objects in our scene. I don't think we do. Keep in mind, it's going to look dull as we render it right now because the compositing hasn't kicked in yet, so it'll kick in once the render's done. Right now we have about a minute left. It should hopefully not take that long, but as you guys can see, if I zoom in here, it's a little noisy, so we might have to bump up our samples, but when that denoiser kicks in, it may just save us. So let's see. The sphere looks pretty good. I'm looking at the edges here. Again, this is a 4K render, so I'm really excited to see how this comes out. We have about 30 seconds left, so I was definitely wrong about the guess on how long this would take, but let's go ahead and see what happens. And I'm totally setting this to my background as soon as this is done. Let's see how this looks. About 15 seconds left here, guys. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Anytime now. Let's see. And it's about done. Let's go ahead and let that compositing kick in. And boom, there is our render. It looks fantastic. Let me zoom in, check the denoising quality here. It looks good. Let's go ahead and save this and set it to desktop background and kind of see what that looks like. I'm just gonna go ahead, image, save as, go to my downloads, and I'm gonna go ahead and just call this desktop BG. Cool. And save image. And just like that, we have created a really cool desktop background. I'm gonna go ahead and X out of Blender. I'm gonna go to my downloads, and I'm going to find this and set as desktop background. It was about time that I switched my background out anyway. This looks really good. I'm really happy with this, guys. I think this is going to be hopefully a successful tutorial. Hopefully you guys got something cool out of this. This is just a really simple way to kind of create these cool landscapes. And you can also mess with other settings that you want. Basically, just take what I gave you and mess with it. Like, have fun with it, you know what I mean? Use your own images, use your own textures. Create a voxel remesh if you want to. You don't even have to use blocks. I just knew that blocks would come out good. And based on the displacement, I knew that it would easily be able to grab that displacement and convert it into a new mesh kind of style. So, yeah, guys, that's pretty much it. We've got our subject, we've got our landscape, we've got some nice depth of field going on here, a little environment texture for some basic lighting, as well as some low roughness on that material, kind of like slightly higher metallic feel. I think it came out awesome, guys. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you guys have a fantastic day. See you later.